Alrighty. Good evening, all. This is the Resilient Living podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Wilson from Resilient Living, joined by
And
my always, present friend.
yep, I'm Ryan Steva with the Homestead Consultant.
Awesome. So, this episode will be an interesting one for me personally because this is a subject that, um, because of the physical layout of my land, is really going to be useful to me, and I don't know very much about it at all.
Yeah,
So, I'm looking forward to learning with everybody else.
yeah. Hopefully, people get a lot out of this. I want to kind of cover both what swales, gabions, and stone lines are, what they do, and when you should and shouldn't use them. So hopefully, it's a broad topic that people get a lot out of.
Yeah, I think it will be. Because I mean, especially obviously not all of our listeners are going to be in Middle Tennessee, but if you happen to be, we have undulating land. That's just what we've got. We don't there ain't a flat stretch of land anywhere, well, at least not on this side, not in Middle Tennessee. So, yeah.
I mean, there's as you get further east, you see more of it, but certainly locally to you and I, it's hilly everywhere,
Yep.
and even in some cases too hilly to do some of these techniques. But
Sure. Which is an important distinction that
yeah,
we'll dive into that, I'm sure, about when is a proper application for this type of feature.
right, absolutely. So
And I'm assuming that this applies fairly universally, obviously not just in Middle Tennessee, but, Arizona and, all up and through Minnesota and all that.
yeah, wherever you're at, these principles are going to apply and kind of cross over. Of course, I work more in the Middle Tennessee area, Kentucky, northern Alabama, things like that. But the principles can be applied anywhere. In fact, swales were dug during the I don't know what they call it. The work programs they had after the Great Depression.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm blanking on the name at the moment, but there were these giant swales dug throughout a portion of the desert in Arizona. And
Really?
I should look it up, but Jeff Lawton has a video where he's standing in one of those swales and it's a giant,
Giant.
yeah,
Like you mean giant, giant. Oh, okay.
like giant swale. So the thing is probably 12 feet tall by 12 feet wide.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. Huge. And so these swales, they run, I think like, I don't know, a couple miles, but
Wow.
you go on the downhill side and you get a few feet away from these things and it's desert again. But on the backside, like from the top,
Yeah.
going down the backside, it's just about jungle back there.
That's
Um,
awesome. I've
yeah.
seen something similar. I want to say it's similar. They're like little semicircle divots, I guess.
Hmm.
Um I want to say it was in North Africa.
Yep.
They were reclaiming desert.
Yes.
And it's incredibly effective. So I mean, obviously it works. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's dive into why it
Those
works and how it works, I guess.
yeah, those things you're talking about, they're interesting. They're like a half circle or a half
Yeah.
moon.
Yeah.
Um, they're called a few different things. One of them is a planting circle, I believe. But
Okay.
there's a couple names for them. But yeah, those are the same premise where you're basically creating a space where, if you think of, oh, there's like ring water games where there's like a half. See if I can get in
Yeah,
frame
yeah.
here. A half circle, and the rings you blow them up with water, and they kind of come down and catch in those,
Yeah.
and they terrace down almost like one's. Oops, one's right after the other. And these half circles or the planting circles are the same way where as water pours out of one, they pour down into the next. So
Sure. And that's
yeah,
the
there's
kind of the premise is just like giving the water a chance to stay and become more useful.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. So here's a couple of reasons why swales. The I'll just kind of fly through these and then we'll talk more about them in detail. But um, one of the main reasons is you can use swales, stone lines, gabions. All of them have the very similar uses. You just have different use cases. So one of the primary reasons or uses for them is to move water from one place to another, or to spread it out across your property or across the landscape that you're working with. So you can see on the picture kind of behind us or to the right of us, I've got a small swale, and that's filled up with water along a what's called contour, which I'll explain in a minute. But that water, basically, what was coming down in a valley now gets spread out across the entire landscape. And so everything gets water, rather than just the things in the valley. And I can use this swale to move water from one place on the landscape to another if that's what I want to do as well.
Sure. And I imagine there's going to be a reduced detrimental effect of that water flowing through one, smaller focused area where you have a lot of erosion. This spreads that out so that there's less.
Yeah, absolutely. So it slows it down. The common phrase you'll hear when people talk about swales is slow spread and soak.
Oh, sure.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yep. So you want to catch the water as it's speeding up. So as it goes down, actually, now would be a good time to talk about contours.
Yeah.
Um, so this is a topo map, but the lines on a topo map are the exact same idea as on contour, meaning they stay at the same elevation across a slope.
So it's just
So,
the cross section of the landscape.
yep. And
Okay.
so if you can see where, unfortunately, I can't point to it, but if you can see where these contour lines or basically focus into these points, those are valleys.
Hmm.
So, or they could be ridges depending on which way
Which
the
direction they're going. Yeah.
topography is going, right?
Sure.
But typically, those harsher points that you see, those are going to be the valleys. And what happens is the water starts going down those valleys, and it builds up speed and volume. And
Because
so,
it focuses all that water into that one place.
exactly. And
Yep.
something also to keep in mind is when you look at these contour lines, water will always flow exactly 90 degrees off contour from the lines.
Okay.
So if you look at the line and think about an exactly perpendicular line from the point you're choosing on the contour line, that is where the water is going to flow, and it's going to end up in one of those valleys. And then so it basically builds up both volume and speed, and as it does that, you create erosion.
Sure. Sure.
So if you think about the picture that we're looking at here, and there's that little area that actually comes closer to where the picture was taken, or that kind of comes uphill
Yeah. It looks
towards
like
where I
it's
was
getting
standing.
closer to us. Yeah.
Hmm. That's a very small valley. So the swale had to basically turn and go up that valley a little bit, and so
So
that's
that
where
it would maintain that same
same
height.
height. Yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep, same latitude or same height on the hillside, and so that would indicate or show you that that's technically a valley. And then the areas that are further away from the camera or further downhill would be ridges that typically would get a lot less water than those valleys would.
Sure.
So now I'm taking the water that's condensing or consolidating in that valley and spreading it out across the system.
Yeah. That makes
So
sense.
so that's the idea of on contour, is that we're looking at these contour lines, and um, there's ways of getting these in, yard scale contours.
Okay.
Um, so they're a lot more detailed, uh, and maybe that's a topic for another show. But you can get much more detailed contours that are, instead of being neighborhood wide or county wide, they're going to look they're going to be local. Um, so here is that same swale from a
Yeah.
different
Okay.
angle. Um, this was right after it was dug, but I drew a blue line on it and just showed how water would flow into it and then spread out, just to give kind of a visualization of this system. So that's what swales are. So you mentioned reducing erosion. A couple of other things that they really help with is because they're soaking water, they're going to store that water, like we've talked about before with thinking about a water battery in the hydrological
Yeah.
cycle.
Right.
So they're going to store that water for the use of plants later or at that moment. So the plants that are planted on the swale are going to be a lot healthier. And a lot of the stuff that's downhill is going to be given water over time instead of all at once and then it's gone.
Sure.
So,
So it looks like you're using this to water some trees.
yes. Um,
Nice.
yep. Yeah, you can't see the trees well in this picture, but I think there you can see some
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
trees on the downhill side of that swale.
Hmm.
You can see how green and lush that swale is. And this is just a couple months after it was dug out. Um,
Nice.
yeah, so it recovered incredibly fast. And those trees all have done way better than any of the other trees in the orchard. So um, when I do tours of this
Proof
property,
positive that it works.
yeah, you can see the fruit on them is better. The trees are growing better. They have less disease issues because they have more consistent water. And the swale actually builds a bit of an ecosystem of its own. So, and it catches fertility. So if you've got with erosion, if you think of the soil that's being eroded as containing fertility, soil life, everything else,
Hmm.
when that gets spread out, you're pushing that fertility across horizontally across your contour to all these places instead of letting it run down and basically collect in a valley or actually make its way out to the ocean, which is the case in most cases. So
Sure.
swales and gabions and stone lines can catch water or catch fertility as they run downhill. If you set them up right, and this is a little bit different technique, but if you put them at what are called key lines at the top of a hill,
Okay.
so the key line is where you've got a hill and you've got like a plateau at the top, and right as it starts to roll off, that's your key line.
Okay.
If you put a
Just
swale
the
on that,
crest there.
yeah, just below, just as it starts to crest down, if you put a properly designed keyline swale in there, you can actually create springs at the bottom of the hill or
Because it
somewhere
forces
else
that
down the
water to
hill.
go down in and then come out further down the hillside.
Exactly. So
Maybe I could do that.
it pushes all this water that's being collected at the top of the hill into the hill instead
Sure.
of that water finding a valley and just eroding and
And just
washing
yeah,
out.
ripping down. Uh-huh. Because that's usually what happens in my field is it rips down that hillside right into my field and just makes some mucky mess of everything and
Yep,
rips all my topsoil off.
exactly. So yeah, swales can help a lot with that. And keyline swales, like I said, can create springs. Um, People have successfully done this with key lines. They actually have created springs, and in fact, my property, there's a swale, probably a 200-year-old swale up the hill on my
Ah,
neighbor's property, and there's a spring below my house.
right.
And I think the spring's always been there, but I think that swale was set up to basically add to.
Yeah, yeah.
And in my valley, if you take LiDAR and you look at all the hills in my valley,
Yeah.
there's all these half moon, like crescent water basin catches.
Interesting.
And somebody put them in, I believe, at least 150 or more years ago. They're all up and down the hills in the valley. And
Wow.
I don't
Somebody
think,
knew what they were doing.
yes, and I don't think they were intended to be ponds. I think they were intended to be water infiltration locations. And there's now springs throughout the valley more than you would typically see in other locations.
That's
So
cool.
it's pretty neat. And it's pretty neat that the new technology, LiDAR, I can now see all of that. And
Sure.
probably nobody else in the world has even noticed it
Oh yeah.
on my property. So the person
Sure.
that put them in is probably the only person, in
That
the
knew that
last
they were
100
ever
years that,
there. Yeah.
yeah, had any idea, which is pretty cool. So, um, another thing to note about these systems is typically we're going to want them on contour, but there are some instances where you may actually run them off contour. So you might use a slight slope, like a 1% slope or grade.
Okay. Just to get it to a destination or something.
Yep. You maybe want to push the water towards a pond or a water feature or somewhere else on your property, like around. I put one in around my house to push water around my house. So it's really not about trying to store it in the landscape.
You just want to get away from your foundation. Yeah, I
Right.
get
I
that.
want to move it somewhere else.
Yep.
But you can function stack this too, where you use it as a water collection system, and then you
Sure.
have your overflow, flow to the next swale, flow to a pond, flow, you know, some direction that you want it to go. And in fact, I'm wondering.
Hmm.
So here is a picture. This is actually the so this swale
Mm-hmm.
is the
Oh,
lowest swale in this picture.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. I,
Okay.
I, I see that little spike there, and that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. So if I were to run this from our vantage point to the left, there's a bit of a valley there where a lot of water runs through.
Uh-huh.
I could actually extend that swale out that direction to catch water from that valley, move it over to the right hand side of the screen,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see where that kind of brown is? It's actually a wood chip pile.
Oh, okay.
I could potentially put a pond there so I could move water over from the valley, have it drain out into that pond. And so I can move water across a landscape using these systems. Well,
Sure.
specifically using a swale, because a gabion wall and a stone line are not
More
really
permeable.
intended. Yeah, they're intended to be very permeable for a reason. So
Sure.
this would be more of a swale specific thing. So
I was trying to think of a resource that people may be able to use for getting a good topographical maps for their area. Do you
yes.
have any resources that you use?
Yeah, let me see. I'm gonna pull it up here actually and see if I can put it in the notes. But USGS has their national map 3D viewer,
Okay.
and um, I'll dump it in the live stream comments, but I'll also put it in the notes for the show notes as well. But basically, you can actually I don't know how to write a comment. Sorry.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I thought I could. Anyways, um, yeah. So I will put it in the show notes. So if people go to the YouTube channel, and I'll send it to you for any of your links as well. But it is a system that allows you to put up different overlays,
okay.
and so you
So
can
you can
put
just
up.
like a Google map and then just overlay this.
Well, no, it has its own what looks kind of like Google Maps,
Oh, okay, cool. So it's
and
kind of more
then
of all in one.
yes,
Nice.
yeah. I wish I could show my window here. I probably can. I don't know how, but
It's all
um,
good.
it has all these overlays that you can put on. So it's going to include things like lidar, and very detailed contours. So you can find a lot of different stuff. Here's an example. This is actually My Maps by Google, and
Okay.
I took the contour information. I pulled it out of the USGS map and overlaid it on Google My Map GIS system. So I'm hoping to do a video soon on how to do this
I'll
because
say that's pretty slick.
yeah, it's really slick, but it's a little bit complex. But
Sure. Sure.
you can see how detailed those contours are,
Yeah.
um, and then you can see kind of the general swale location, that purple and kind of teal color.
Right.
Um, those are where I was, giving the client information about where to put swales, um, because you can't follow those exact little tiny zigzags.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
I think those are something like a 2.5 foot um, elevation change.
Oh,
So
they're super fine.
yes, yep.
Wow.
So those little zigzags you see might be half a foot at most in
Wow.
elevation change. So when you do a swale or a gabion wall or whatever, a stone line, you're not going to get that precise exactly.
Sure.
You're going to go for a little bit smoother line, and then as you build that out, that'll it'll become level. So you don't have to be as precise as these contours that I've got on this slide actually are.
So when you're actually physically going out to produce a swale like this, are you using like a laser, like you would use in construction to
Yeah.
see that line?
So there are multiple ways to do this. I do like to pull this data first, so I have
Sure.
a rough idea of what it's going to look like.
Right.
And then there's a couple different simple, inexpensive ways. The first is to use a true just standard laser level that you can buy at Home Depot. The catch with that is you need to do it kind of evening, like as the
Oh,
sun's going down, so you
because
because
they're
they're
not
not
so
bright out.
bright. Yeah,
Right.
sure.
And you can basically just take a yardstick, a uh, tripod, and a $30 laser level, and go out and map it out. So
Nice.
that's one way. Um, you can use an A-frame level.
Okay.
So an A-frame level is basically it's the shape of an A, and then it has a level board across it that you put a level on.
Okay.
Or you can also do it with like a pendulum-looking device that hangs down.
Oh, okay.
So
And so you
you
just
just
spin it until it is level and it's touching.
yeah, you just keep spinning it to the
Yeah.
next location. Um, the issue with the A-frame level is that if you're a little bit off on one of your spins, and then you're a little bit off on one of your spins,
It
you can
adds up.
work your way downhill and
Sure.
or uphill, and
Yeah.
it adds up. Um, so even if I use an A-frame level, I typically will recheck with a laser level
Sure.
just to verify later.
Yeah.
Um, you can also get just your standard. You can rent a construction level,
Oh,
which
which
is
are more powerful, so you can do it during the day.
and most of the newer, especially rentable construction levels, will come with a measuring stick, which has a name that I don't recall. But those measuring sticks have a like a something that senses the laser.
Oh,
So
okay.
it'll beep in a
It'll
way
beep
to
at
tell
you.
you go back uphill, go downhill, and you'll know. So it really helps. It
Sure.
really gives you um, it helps you step through it really quickly and really easily. So those are great to rent. You can buy them for I think around $300 if you want to put the money into it. Um,
I'd
and
say for most people, probably not going to buy something like that if they're not, unless they're cutting swales like all the time. I
yeah,
guess maybe you could have a
right,
business. There's a side business right there.
exactly. Great idea. Yeah, exactly. You could do it as a side business, finding contour for people. I think that's actually a great option. Um, but it's easier to rent. They're like 25, $30 a day to rent, and it's probably well worth it. And then you can get those flags, those locator flags,
Yeah.
really cheap, and you just locate and
Just
mark
dunk,
out
dunk,
your
dunk, dunk.
yep. So then you can come back later and cut in the swales. um, and with swales, the easiest way I've found to do them, if you have access to it, is one of those micro or mini excavators.
Oh, those are
And
fun.
yeah, they're a lot of fun. And they've got a plow on the front. So you go uphill from the swale, you
And
drop
just
the
push
plow.
down into it.
Yeah. And you're
Done.
done. So you can do a couple thousand feet of swales in a day or two with one of those.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, but you can hand dig them too, which speaking of all that, I have in the show notes, I've got a whole playlist series on how to build swales by hand. So how to do, all the visuals on how to do how to find the contour with standard laser level with an A-frame, when you should, when you shouldn't build swales, like um, the whole how and why is laid out in a visual way in my series. So I
Nice.
put that in the show notes already for people.
It's a good resource. Go check it out.
Yeah. Um. So let's see. Should I kind of explain what a Gabion wall is compared to a
Yeah,
stone
I'm
wall?
really curious. Yeah,
Okay.
because this is all new to me.
Yeah. So a Gabion wall is fairly well known in permaculture. It's something that's adapted from the landscape industry, essentially.
Okay.
And how it works is it's like stacked stone with, but it's inside of a cage. So you make a metal cage out of.
I've seen that. Okay. Yeah.
Actually, let me see if. There we go. Here's
Yep.
Gabion
Yep.
wall. So you put up essentially a cattle panel, and then you put stone in it. And so if you put that on contour as debris and water and things come downhill, they'll hit it, spread out. The debris will stay in the Gabion wall and kind of build up behind it.
It acts as
Whereas,
a filter.
yeah, it's like a giant biological filter.
Nice. And then you have all that material on the backside of it that builds up, right?
Yep. And that material on the backside can actually become a terrace.
Sure. Yeah, because over
So
time it would just fill in and become this, yeah,
yeah,
new,
so it becomes like a retaining wall as well.
very cool.
So that'll spread the water out, but because it's so permeable, it's not going to act like a swale where you can really move
Redirect the
water.
water. Yeah,
Yeah, you're just helping spread it out and slow it down. But as it builds up behind it, that becomes quite useful as well. So you're holding that fertility on your property as long as possible.
sure.
So that was a gabion wall. This is a stone wall or a stone line,
Okay.
which I'm trying to popularize the use of and the nomenclature for.
Okay.
And the reason is people are doing this, but they never like nobody's really given it a name or popularized the name here in the United States, but it is being used in parts of Africa, and it's called a stone line.
Okay.
And so the difference between a stone line um, and a gabion wall is that the stone line is much smaller and it's much simpler. It doesn't have the cage, so you're not going to put a huge amount of soil behind it.
Mm,
It's more going to work just to collect that debris as it comes downhill to spread out the water. Um, but you're not going to build up, multiple feet of
sure.
it's kind of a retaining wall because you can see what I've done here. I've actually got terraces now. And in my case, the reason I put this in is you can see my chicken coop and run just above that.
Yeah,
And all that was on a slope because there's no flat spot on my property.
because
Um,
Tennessee.
yeah, because Tennessee, exactly. And so the chickens would scratch, and I used them to make my compost, and a lot of that scratch would end up outside the fence going
Sure.
downhill. And not too far below this is my neighbor's property. So basically, my chickens were creating compost for me, and then the compost was going to the neighbor.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's not good.
not helpful.
Let's
So
keep that.
yep. And so I basically took some stones from my property and just found contour and lined them up. And it wasn't even exact contour. You can see I've got multiple stones stacked in some areas
Yeah, yeah.
because those were low points because I had to go around a tree in this case.
Gotcha.
And so what happens is my chickens start kicking and scratching, and whatever ended up outside of the run got caught by the stone line. And so now everything uphill from that stone line is this incredibly dense, super useful
Sure.
material that is now growing comfrey, growing pear trees and apple trees.
Right.
So it's really, really functional. It's really useful. And I could actually start stair stepping this down the hill and create multiple little terraces.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So is this would you use this on a flatter surface than the one with the cage, the gabion? Because that seems like that would be more for a more extreme hill slope. Is that
It
accurate?
can be, yeah. So typically it would be gabions um, in normal landscaping are more. They're also considered more of a wall. So
Okay.
you're building something that's a divider between areas, but it can also be used to build up debris behind or so in permaculture or in kind of naturally minded regenerative agriculture, you can use gabions on a fairly steep slope to create retaining walls if they're designed properly. So obviously, you get too much of a slope and you don't have proper footings or proper anchors.
Yeah.
That can all
It's
end
not
up
going to stay there
downhill.
very long.
No, so that has to be considered. Your design considerations for how tall the gabion can be and how steep the slope it will of a slope it will work on. If it's designed properly and has proper anchors, you can get away with it on a pretty steep slope. It can be really useful. Whereas these stone lines, once you get to a certain slope level, you have to dig them in and a little bit. to get them to hold in place, or they're just going to slide downhill.
Sure.
So in my case, this hill was steep enough that I did have to do. I dug just a
You back
tiny
cut
bit,
it a little bit. Okay.
just to get them flat, and then I was able to stack extra stones on top as it filled in behind it as well. So
So as time goes on, will you produce or just continue to add more layers to your stone wall?
yeah, I'll probably add one more layer to the stone line, but and that should get it level with the backside of the chicken run,
Nice.
fully level with the backside of the chicken run, because you can see the soil is actually still mounded a bit
Yeah.
because they're kicking so much out, but it's pretty much stopped it at this point from going downhill at all. But yeah, I can put another layer up. In theory, if you're stacking it back uphill, like if the one stone, the next stone is uphill a
Slightly.
little bit
Yeah.
further,
Right.
you could stack that pretty far. But then you start having this kind of weird angled wall. So um,
Which could be a
I
good feature if that's what you're going for. It gives a lot of flexibility seemingly, and that you can express. I mean, because you could do really cool designs through that, and yeah, I can
yeah.
see that.
Well, and you if you stack it a little bit higher, you could start, because this is a south facing wall. If I stacked it a little bit higher, I could start putting things like rosemary that oftentimes struggle to make it through the winter here
Sure.
right up against it.
Yeah, you just have all
Um,
that thermal mass that's getting all that southern exposure. Yeah.
exactly. And it's got good soil. It's going to be well drained soil.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. So rosemary, lavender, maybe if I really went to town with this stone line, I could potentially put things like figs on it to get them to last better through the winter.
Very cool.
So yeah, a lot you can do. It's an edge. So in permaculture, we're always thinking about edges because
Right.
that's where interesting things happen.
Yes.
So it's, you're going to have lizards in there, potentially snakes,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
but you're going to have critters that like living in that space that actually add to the biodiversity of the system. Um, yeah, it's well, you probably are also going to have um, frogs and toads and things that are going to overwinter in that wall
Oh yeah. Sure.
and maybe find refuge in there during the summer. And so now you're, with lizards and frogs and things, you're adding to the critters that are going to eat mosquitoes and other insect pests.
Awesome.
Yeah. So hopefully, does that kind of give you a good idea of the difference between a gabion wall, a stone wall, or a stone line, and a swale
Yeah. No,
overall?
I like that. That's good.
So here's a stone line in a more traditional use in Africa.
Okay.
So you can see this field looks pretty flat.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of movement, but what happens is in these drier environments, you have to plan for the flood. So when you get a really hard rain on land that doesn't hold water or that is really dried, it's like if you ever take a sponge that's totally 100% dried out and
Yeah.
try to get it to soak, it won't soak up water quickly.
Right.
And so the land is the same way in this, like in this picture, on the far side where there's no stone lines, it's actually like sand and desert again.
Ah, yes.
So what the stone line is doing is when they get a massive amount of water, it basically creates a sheet. And I think my next slide, yeah. Um,
Oh,
so you can see on the top, I guess that's to the right, where the water's high, that's higher up on the landscape. As it hits each of these stone lines, it slows down and spreads out and soaks in. And so this stone line that we're looking at here, what that's doing is it's giving the water time to actually start absorbing, just like if you took a fully dry sponge and you gave it a little bit more time in the water. So once it starts absorbing, then it will absorb more and more and hold it better. So just slowing it down and essentially allowing it to be a sheet across the landscape on a fairly flat surface can do a lot. Now, if you're in, I don't know, some really flat area of Wisconsin that has deposits from glacier activity and you've got
oh,
amazing flat soil that absorbs water well and plenty of rain, this becomes not really useful.
sure.
it basically just creates an impediment to accessing your property.
Yeah, right.
Because water isn't eroding things. It's not, it's not moving across the landscape fast. It's generally soaking in.
Sure.
But in places that are very dry, this and fairly flat, this makes a ton of sense. To hold the water there and spread it out, slow it down so that it percolates into the soil, and then over time you go from a desert to something more like this, where you have grazing lands for animals, and then as you bring in the ruminants, their stomach works like an arc for microbiome for the
Yeah.
soil microbiome, and so now they're holding that for when the soil is ready to accept it. And you can see in this picture that it's ready to accept it, and you've got a grazing animal out there.
Right.
So it's really amazing how all these systems are, God made them to work together.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to see how a totally barren landscape can be completely transformed. And then you bring in ruminants and it actually brings life back to the system.
Hmm.
Whereas most people think that, it's, overgrazing is going to destroy the world. And there's something to that, but
Yeah.
your grazing
Properly
animal,
managed is,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, just like improperly managed water. If you put water behind a dam and then break the dam, it's going to destroy things. It's going to
Yep.
create little green canyons. Um, and ruminants are the same way. If you use them properly, they become the life-giving organism of the greater soil ecosystem.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's the stone lines. Here's just another angle of the stone line on my property. Um,
Nice.
but you can do this through a woods. The one of the reasons I really love stone lines, and I have a friend who's calling them redneck swales, where you can take a tree. So you take a free tree, you cut it
Oh,
down,
yeah.
put that on contour, but then pile a little bit of soil behind it intentionally,
All right.
and it
Comes a little
becomes
dam.
yeah. And then you pile, you let all the debris from your woods run down onto it as well. And you kind of create these terraces. So you can do this in the woods. You can do stone lines in the woods. Um, you can do these things where you couldn't do swales, and gabion walls are way too expensive and impractical. So stone lines and using like I don't know, log lines or whatever, um, to create this slowing effect can make a huge difference. And a lot of people will run things like pigs or chickens through a woods
Oh,
on
yeah.
a
Yeah.
slope,
Sure.
and that can be really really detrimental and really destructive.
Yeah.
So if you put something like this in to catch the debris that's coming down because the pigs rooted things up or chickens scratched too much, now you can create these really really beautiful, really nice, really manageable terraces throughout your woods, as opposed to just having all that topsoil wash away.
Sure. Sure.
So, the leaf litter then stays on property and becomes soil.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, and kind of like we had talked about, like running if you ran like your duck pond up at the top, and so you could use that swale to meander that enriched water out of that duck pond down through, watering your nut trees, and then you run your, pigs through there, and you get yummy bacon.
Exactly. Yeah. And let me pull up to your point. So we were talking about the green lines here
Yeah.
being the swales. Um, so you can have each of those swales from the top there going down, that's downhill. Each of those run over to each other, but this is an orchard system that has swales, and ducks and geese are amazing for orchards.
Mm,
So we could fence this off and run ducks in there. The ducks really are not going to eat our fruit,
right.
for the most part. Maybe a few berries they can get, but they'll eat fruit that drops and the bugs in the fruit. But they're excellent at eating snails and slugs
Yes.
and pests. So yeah, like to your point, we could put a like a little, I don't know, a swimming pond for them at the top of this system.
Right.
And ducks, as gross as it is, and geese, the second they get into water, they hit the eject button and
Yes, they do.
make poopy water.
Yep.
So that water needs to get changed out fairly often. Well, now I can put a drain line with valves in it to each of these swales, or maybe it's just a hose from
Yeah,
that.
sure.
Yeah,
Simple.
from the little pond thing. It could just be a kiddie pool, down to each of these swales, and I just drain it each day to a different swale, so I
Mm-hmm.
never have one that's getting too much water.
Sure.
So then I'm taking this fertility from my ducks and geese or whatever else that are providing me a service in my system,
Right.
also probably providing eggs or meat
Yep.
as well, and insect protection. Now I'm getting all that fertility and it's going back into the landscape.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that works really well. The other thing you can do is I set those swales up. I know I'm zoomed out a bit on that picture, but those swales were set up in such a way that we can actually tractor meat chickens through in the
In
chicken
between them?
tractor. Yes. So we
Nice.
can drag them in a line along, in between these swales, and they're going to add fertility to that system as well.
Well, and we had talked a little bit before we went live about it doesn't require it to be this deep trench. It can be
Yes.
a rather subtle little, bump that just captures that water, just slows it down.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is to that point. This is the swale that we've been kind of looking at just to keep it consistent this whole time. Um, I can mow all the way up to where that blue line is. Like I can get my mower down in that, and it's fairly minimal. I cut it to be a low slope. It
Right.
doesn't need to be this giant ditch and giant berm. You don't have to destroy your landscape. It doesn't need to be inaccessible. As small as possible and able to still do the job you need it to do is
Yeah.
generally ideal.
Yeah. Small is necessary, right?
Right. Yeah. But I see so many people making the mistake of digging these giant ditches with giant berms,
Sure.
and they're completely inaccessible. Probably pretty dangerous too. And
Yeah.
I mean, the only way to maintain them or to keep them cleared out is to literally take a string trimmer down into this giant ditch.
Yeah. What a pain.
And yeah, it's not.
We're trying to
So
reduce the amount of work that we have to do, right?
yep. Yeah, and so I could drive over this berm. I don't recommend it because swales, you don't want to compact them. You want them to be
Oh,
permeable.
yeah, sure. That makes sense.
So when you dig them, you don't want to like compact the soil on the berm side, or on the ditch side, because the idea is you want to soak the water. You don't want to hold the water and make a stagnant mosquito pond,
Sure. Sure.
right? Or kill things off because there's standing water there all the time. Um, Now, one of the things that if you look it up, you'll get in when you shouldn't build a swale
Oh, okay.
is if you've got really deep clay soils that don't absorb water well.
Because it
But
just sheds off. It just runs off. Yeah.
yep, but that's what this is. Where you see the swale was, and still to an extent is hard clay.
So you're
But
building a soil layer on top of your clay.
yeah, there's a couple things that you'll notice here. You can see that there's wood chips in the ditch part of the berm.
Yep.
That does several things for me. One, when you put wood chips in, worms go crazy underneath them.
Yes.
So you've got the worms burrowing holes. Then they're also taking the nutrient that's breaking down from these wood chips down into those holes. So you're getting organic matter down in the holes that make it close, bring it closer to a loam.
Yeah.
So over time, it becomes more and more loamy, deeper and deeper down. So it starts to become able to absorb that water that's there.
Sure.
The other thing that you don't see that's under this, under the wood chips, there is a whole bunch of compost that our chickens made.
Oh, okay.
So I put
Nice.
compost, and this soil was really acidic. So I put some wood ash, some compost, and then I covered that all in wood chips. And the worms went crazy. And then we planted things like daikon radish to help. Basically, daikon radish will put this 2-inch wide, multi-inch deep hole in the ground.
Nice. Okay.
Yep.
Sure.
And the worms will eat it. And so now you have this big tube. Where's the camera here? Big tube in the ground essentially of worm castings because the
Ooh.
worms come in and eat the
Uh-huh.
radish that just made this hole.
Uh-huh.
And so you can use the swale itself or these other systems, but in this case the swale to increase the permeability of the soil and to actually bring the soil from heavy clay to something that's closer to a permeable loam.
Nice. So
Yeah.
so that's for like a clay soil. What about like rocky soils? We have a lot of areas that get up on top of the plateau that are really rocky. Is that still an option?
You're talking about large rocks close to the surface, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where something like a stone line is going to be a lot more useful.
Sure. Okay. Because it allows that material to get trapped there and become the richer topsoil.
Yes. And because you're not going to be able to dig down consistently across a landscape
Sure.
without hitting that rock. So you could use kind of a combination. If there's areas where you can find a contour line that has deep enough soils to do a small swale like this.
Gotcha.
Um, so yes, you could, but you have to be aware of the design restrictions. The other thing to think about is swales. They have all those benefits I talked about, but what I would recommend for people to do is think of them as a tree growing system.
Okay.
So instead of I'm just going to put this swale in, the trees should basically always have, or I'm sorry, swales should basically always have a tree planted on the berm.
Oh, up on top of the berm. So like
Yeah, trees.
as you're going, you're just planting and forming this. Okay.
Yeah. So you could form the swale first and then plant the tree. That's fine. You can wait a little bit. But the idea is the swale itself and the tree kind of go together. So the tree is going to have roots that are going to help with the permeability of the water.
Okay. Sure.
And the tree is going to be highly benefited by the swale system. And so you can tie this in multiple ways. In this case, we've done this with an orchard. So our fruit trees are a lot healthier, have a lot less diseases. But you could tie this in with a silvo pasture system.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yep. So you could put fodder trees, which would be something like a um, let's see, hybrid willow or a poplar or a mulberry
Okay.
that are
Ooh, mulberry.
intended, yeah, they're intended specifically as high protein feed for your animals.
Right.
But they're going to help manage and regulate the hydrological cycle in your pasture. They're going to provide shade for your animals, food for your animals. You can stack all these functions together. So if you're doing a swale, there's the vast majority of the time you should be planting trees on the berm of that swale.
Gotcha. Um, so what about Nana's question about potatoes as opposed to the daikon radish?
Uh, Potatoes are going to be really subject to rotting, and so if
Oh,
they're
okay.
underwater, um,
Sure.
yep. Whereas the daikon are more resilient to that for short term uh, submersion.
And because you're basically just letting it go, you're allowing the worms to eat it away. So you're not
Yep.
doing it to harvest. You're just letting it.
Yeah. There is a caveat to that. So swales at least in the orchard, the way that I've got them set up, and in most permaculture homestead situations, swales eventually fill, just like
Oh
the
yeah,
cabin
sure.
wall fills, right?
Yeah.
And you're not trying to fight that. In my case, I try to accelerate that. So
Because you're
there will
creating
always,
that stepped environment, in which case the water's slower anyway because
yeah,
it's flatter,
yeah, because you're still removing the valleys and peaks
right?
that are causing the water to concentrate.
Yes.
Um, and so you're still able to spread it out. But if you look at the swale here, and if that fills in behind it over time, you could potentially plant row crops in that space. And I suppose you could if you found something that was somewhat resilient or resistant to, or didn't care if it was overly wet for a period.
Sure.
Um, I've actually heard of people doing rice in
Ah,
in
nice.
swales. Yeah. Um, but you could do potatoes and other row crops as that fills in and becomes less of a trough that holds water and just more of the backside of a terrace. So
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
it's an option.
Nice.
Um, trying to think, there's definitely some times not to use swales, and I don't I want to cover that because
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
people who do homesteading or permaculture, usually there's this huge push for, do swales, put swales in, and they're always great, basically, is the attitude, and they're not always great.
Okay,
Um, so we talked about, if you've got flat, permeable land, swales probably aren't for you.
sure. Because they're not
Um,
necessary at that point.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you've got low lying, kind of marshy, boggy land, swales probably aren't for you
Sure.
unless you're specifically setting them up to have something like a Chunampa type system,
What?
which Chinampas, they are, I
It's like,
think
God
I'm
bless
saying
you.
that right. They were used by Central and South American tribes,
Okay.
and they would be used in waterways. Basically, they would be these, in their case, they would be these growing, like floating islands that were soil filled.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
they'd build them out of like logs around the outside, and then I think they'd use things like willows to anchor them into the bog area.
Oh,
Um, and you can do something that's essentially the same by having a very wet area where you dig down and you use that soil to mound, and so you can create these
okay.
mounded
Sure.
growing systems that are wetter than usual. And so certain things that you might want to grow in wet environments
Yeah.
like rice, or elderberry or other things like that that really like having moisture under,
Hmm.
within about a foot of the surface.
Right.
um, you can grow plants like that like crazy.
Sure.
So um, anyways, all that to say, your swales, if you've got a low lying, high moisture area, you're probably better off not putting them there unless you have a really specific reason to. Um, you want to
Is that something that part of your consulting that you can come onto the land and look and see and evaluate whether that is a good use?
Generally speaking, yes. And that comes back to what we've talked about over and over again, which is be on your land for a year, watch
Yes.
it. And
Yes.
so, I can't see everything in a consult because maybe it's a time of year where I can't see it. But if you've been observing, I can ask you.
Sure. Sure.
So being observant and watching it, not making big changes to your landscape
Yes.
is
Incremental
very,
changes.
yes, exactly. Um, yeah. So slopes, if you've got too much of a slope, you don't want to swale. Um, you know, generally speaking, the rule of thumb is over 20 degrees of slope, or over 20% slope.
Right.
Um,
Right.
you generally don't want to, but these smaller ones, like what we're looking at, um, can generally handle more slope than the larger ones that most people use. So you might be able to fudge that number a little bit,
Nice.
if you're using smaller, more careful, deliberate swales like this.
Sure. Yeah, because I've got that hill on that that's what I want. I want to grow, trees on it. And but like you said, it's important to keep that water there because it just wants to run right off. So yeah,
Right.
perfect
Yep.
application.
You want to make sure that when you're designing it, that you're avoiding running water towards a building or a
Yeah,
structure.
right. Yeah. Luckily I don't have anything down there
Yep.
because it'd be underwater anyway.
Right. So just keep that in mind. You want to plot out your swales, your stone lines, before putting them in. So plot them out. You might end up looking at that plot of flags that you put out and realizing, well, if I moved it downhill 4 feet, it would be perfect.
Ah,
But where it is, it's not.
sure.
Um, so if you plot it out and figure out what your contours are, then you can visually see the representation, and you can run the same scenario again, but uphill or downhill a little bit to see if it fits.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
in the case of the swale you see in the background, that was run after I put the trees in because
Oh,
I got like 50 trees for they're like $3 a piece
nice.
of all the varieties I wanted on clearance.
Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. But the problem was I didn't have time to put in swales before I planted the trees.
Ah, but you knew
So,
whereabouts the swale was going to go.
yes. So typically you would want to plant the tree on the swale berm. My trees are just
Slight
slightly
behind.
below.
Or yeah,
Yeah,
okay, sure.
slightly downhill. They're still benefited probably about 80% of what they would be if I
Oh,
put
okay.
them on the berm.
So what I mean, rule of thumb, like within a foot of the peak of the berm, or like how close?
Yeah, so you can vary things a little bit. So whenever I plant out an orchard or a swale system, I don't just plant trees. I use that contour line as a place to plant berries and
Ooh,
root veggies and
yeah.
the whole food forest in
Yeah.
between, but on that contour line. So instead of spread out, it's like a food forest in a line, and then you have multiple lines.
So it becomes this really cool undulating like pathway of edible wonderfulness,
Exactly. And all the things on it are benefited from each other. So
right?
um, that being said, when I plant blackberries, I plant them down the berm a little bit. If I'm planting elderberries, I plant them in like kind of between halfway between the berm and the ditch because the elderberries like that, like having wet feet there.
Ah, sure.
So it's going to depend a little bit about of on the species, the type of plant that I'm planting, where exactly on the swale I put it. And it probably doesn't matter that much as long as it's not a plant that really hates having water near its roots.
Sure.
Um, in that case, you want to be a little bit careful about where you put it, but it's what I do because I think it adds maybe 10 to 15% on production and quality of plants. But
That's awesome.
yeah, but the reality is it's a fairly small benefit. So if you can't remember all that information, you're not going to screw things up too badly.
Sure, sure. Or they could just call you and you can consult.
There you go. Thank you for selling for me.
Yes.
Another time you might not want to use swales is an area that's going to be especially flood prone, where you're going to get sheets of water over an area.
Ooh, sure. They would become overwhelmed by a huge volume of water in a quick amount of time, I imagine.
Yeah, and it becomes not very useful because most of what you'd be planting on the swale, if it's getting that flooded,
Yeah.
it's going to be too wet unless I don't know, unless you're doing a willow orchard or something.
Something that really likes a lot of yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So keep that in mind, but that is where stone lines can be really helpful.
Sure. Yeah.
So if you've got an area and it kind of sheet floods, maybe a foot deep, you could potentially use stone lines as a way of catching all the debris coming from other, debris as in organic material
Right.
coming from other places like leaves and small branches and things,
Hmm.
and you could
And
actually build your
build
swale
up
that way.
that contour there and flatten it out and slow it
Yeah,
down.
exactly. So you're kind of slowing the flow, but you're not interrupting it to allow it to leave because you don't want to
Right.
hold all of that water. You want to
No.
you want to let it soak in, and then you want the stuff on the surface to finish running off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think yeah, access. Maybe I should touch on a little bit
Yeah.
more. When you design a property, one of the main things you want to keep in mind is access. So once you know your goals, then you can ask, does this thing impede my access to do the thing I want to do?
Yeah, sure. If it's too narrow for my tractor to get through, that's a problem. Yeah.
Yep. And so you'll notice if I go back here that these swales, I can get around them on either side,
Perfect.
that,
Yeah.
that they don't go from one end of my property to the other end without breaks. Um, I could also build in a small culvert in. So essentially, you lay a little pipe on the into the um, ditch of the swale, and then you can push soil over that pipe, And so
Oh,
the
okay.
water can get to either side of the
It
swale.
can flow
Now,
across, but then you have a
yeah,
path to get across it.
yeah.
Nice.
And you're going to compact your swale, which, we talked about earlier is an issue, but it's only going to be one little spot
Right.
and the rest of it's, so you're going to have one spot that becomes a pathway that doesn't function like a swale, but it allows water to get through from one side to the other.
And from a practical standpoint, that may be worth the, yeah,
Yep. Yeah, it's probably worth the sacrifice.
yeah,
Um,
sure.
but leaving those swales open on either end and planning out your overflow sites so
Hmm.
that the water overflows where you want it, uh, rather than just kind of wherever it finds the lowest point in the swale.
Right.
Um, those are really important things, but you always want to make sure that whenever you're putting in or changing your landscape, doing earthworks, that you're not stopping yourself from being able to get somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Because if you want to mow something and you can't get a riding mower in there, now you have to push mow it or take a string trimmer or something. That's not manageable.
No, no.
And as much as we'd like to think that we're going to get away from mowers in permaculture, grazers are great, but you still need to mow after them periodically.
Right. Yeah. Because they're not
Um,
going to get everything or, yeah.
yep.
Yep.
And in a situation like this where it's an orchard, I can run geese through as grazers, but I'm unlikely to run sheep through, and so they're
Yeah.
not going to keep it because the sheep will climb the trees and eat
Oh,
the
yeah.
trees.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to
Buggers.
be careful. Yeah, I want to make sure that I can get a mower in here to mow this down a couple times a year, um, rather than thinking that I'm going to be so permaculturally that so perfect in my permaculture endeavors
Right.
that I don't need to mow. So,
That is
um,
definitely a trap that I catch myself in often is like trying to come up with a perfect plan, the perfect layout that will take care of itself completely. Like, yeah, no,
yeah,
I still have to fuss with it.
yep. And that brings up a related point that's not all what we're talking about today specifically,
Mm.
but just that it's just good to remind people that when you're designing something, if you start small, if you start close to the home, if you start with zone 1 and maybe 2 and get those really dialed in, you're going to be a lot better off as you start to expand
Oh
than
yeah.
if you just throw some things in and you're like, okay, I've got a garden now. I need swales now. I need an orchard now. I need sheep. Um,
It gets
and
so overwhelming so fast.
you stretch yourself too thin, and then you
Yeah.
start doing dumb things
Yeah.
to keep up with those things that you've started,
Yeah.
and
Those
you get less
preconceived
production.
notions will kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Mike, I absolutely agree that Ryan is definitely the best source of swales on YouTube.
Wow. That's a big compliment. Hopefully, one
It's
of
the
the
best I've ever heard.
yeah, like we've said, like we were talking about before, is that it's important not like nobody talks about don't use swales when, right?
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, everybody says swales are great. Here's all the
And they
uses.
are,
Yeah,
but yeah, because there's
exactly.
always a caveat. There's always an exception to any
Mhm.
rule.
Yeah. What are your goals? What is your landscape?
Yep.
How does that fit together? Not just let's go dig some
Just
ditches.
because.
Yeah. Um,
Well, I know I'm
so
supposed to have them, so therefore I must have them. Like, well, does it work for you? I mean,
yeah, and people don't like hearing that sometimes, but it's
sure,
like truth is more important.
it is,
Um,
unfortunately.
yeah, but in as we talked about, in a lot of cases where swales aren't really fully appropriate, a stone line could be. Um,
True, sure.
and I think, like I said, I think it's one of these overlooked um, overlooked use cases where it's something that has a ton of use, very little downsides. Again, you want to make sure you like if I put this in the middle of my yard that I mow, it would be a pain
Yeah, right. You have to go in,
because
cut in around it, and yeah, that would be annoying.
yeah. And now string trimming it to make it look nice all the time, and when it's back here in my orchard below my chicken run, I can mow it a few times a year, and
Yeah,
if I want to take a picture and make people think it looks nicer than it does, I can string trim it.
right. Make those Instagram pictures.
That's right. Do it for the gram.
That's right. That's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah, it's these systems are great. Just know when the appropriate use is and when isn't. So if people have questions, we've
Yeah,
got a couple minutes left, but I would love to answer questions if you have any. Um,
absolutely.
because there's a lot of other things that I probably haven't covered that I just don't know I haven't. Um, so I'd be happy to answer any questions. We touched on a little bit, but I think it's really important to function stack with whether it's swales or stone
Mm,
lines. Um,
absolutely.
this stone line that I've got up, it's catching the fertility before it runs away. And so now I'm growing high value plants on it. I've got you can see there's let's see, filberts and um, plum trees, apple trees, comfrey. I'm probably going to start to grow some creeping thyme and some other medicinals on there as well.
Nice. Yes.
But it's not it's stopping things from going downhill. It's highly fertile, so now I can plant really important herbal stuff on there. It becomes something that grows other things better. It's easier to maintain because I can run my mower behind it
Right.
easier now that it's a flatter space.
Yes.
So when you design these, design them with function stacking in mind, where you're tying all these different concepts and systems together instead of just, oh, it'd look neat here or whatever. Um,
Which it does look really nice. I mean, there's the aesthetic side of it,
yes.
and it does. But yes, there's the pragmatic too.
Yeah. Aesthetics are great. But if I would have put this stone line another foot uphill towards the chicken run,
Okay.
I couldn't get my mower back there.
Oh yeah. Right.
So, and had I put it downhill at all, I would have caused a problem with some of the existing planted trees,
Hmm.
and it would have been the slope kind of it drops off slightly after that.
Sure.
So I would have been putting it on too much of a slope. And so there's this balance and consideration when I installed it of making it easy to maintain, making it do what it was supposed to, and have a lot of value, but it would be really easy to do it wrong and then have a major maintenance issue where now I have to string trim instead of just run the mower over it
Right.
quickly.
Right.
So yeah, I made it just like 6 inches bigger than my mower.
It's just enough. It works.
Yep. And on top of that, when I mow that grass, my ducks and goose and chickens love that fresh grass that I throw into the
Oh, I
run.
bet.
Yeah, so I put
And it's
the
right there, so you just toss it right in.
yep. So the mower flap or the flap that goes down to keep the grass from flying, I just tip it up as I go through there, and
So
it
it kicks it
flings.
out as you go.
And they love it. They just come running and eat it. So, yeah. Oops. Sorry. Yeah. So I don't see any questions coming through. Jared, is there anything that I haven't covered or questions that you have?
I think you covered everything that I had. Yeah. No, this has been great. Gives me
Cool.
lots to think about.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming and being a part of this and watching. Thank you all for your comments. Um, Jared, do you want to let people know what you do and how they can find you?
Sure. Let me get my there we go. Okay. So I am Jared Wilson. I own Resilient Living. You can find us online at resilientliving.com. I have a small store here in Middle Tennessee. We sell a lot of stuff from emergency preparedness stuff, medical stuff, knives, ammunition, to freeze dried foods, a whole array of books covering all the subjects that we talk about on a weekly basis. So it could be permaculture to making salves and tinctures. Emergency communications. I mean, I got a book for just about everything. So yeah, you can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You'll find us at Resilient Living, and then on TikTok we're resilient_living.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Ryan Steva, and I am you can find pretty much everything for me at thehomesteadconsultant.com. It's kind of a say what you do what you say kind of a thing. So it's hopefully easy to remember. You can, if you look me up on YouTube, at the Homestead Consultant is where you can find me. I've got Instagram and TikTok as well, I believe. So if those are the certain crack that you like, that's where
Is
you
your
can find
Instagram
me.
handle the same?
I think it's slightly different, but if you just search the Homestead Consultant as one word, you'll find
There you go.
me. Yep, absolutely. So thank you everybody for being here. And remember that we do this every week at 6. We go live. We cover awesome topics like this, as well as just having local guests on who are
Yeah.
doing cool things on their property. We had what was our guest's name last week?
Will Copeland.
Will, that's right.
Yeah.
And so we had him on last week.
We had
To talk
Stacy
about.
Sustainably. We've
Yep.
had Elliot's. Yeah, we had Elliot on. We've had a couple.
Yeah.
Got a couple more that I really want to get on here.
Yeah, we've got to get a few more scheduled, but we
Yeah.
do this every week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central. So if you like this, you can tune in next time, and we'd love to get your comments and questions and things because we can answer them live.
Mm-hmm. Make sure you like and share the posts and follow us on Facebook and YouTube and wherever you're following us. Oh,
Absolutely.
all
All right.
righty.
Thanks, everyone.
Later.